My name is Sarah, and if you asked anyone in Jason's circle about me 3 years ago, they would have told you I was a nobody. A humble, soft-spoken girl from a quiet town who got lucky enough to snag a rising star in the corporate world. When Jason and I met, I was intentionally living under the radar. I had spent my early 20s building a tech startup from my laptop. By the time I turned 26, I sold it to a Silicon Valley giant for tens of millions of dollars. But wealth came with a heavy price. Fake friends, greedy relatives, and men who only cared about what I could buy them. So, I made a choice. I hid my money in a private family trust. I moved to a modest apartment, dressed simply, and told myself that the next man I loved would love me, not my bank account. When I met Jason, he seemed different. He was ambitious, hardworking, and talked endlessly about his dreams. I fell for his drive. When we got engaged, I suggested a prenuptial agreement just to see his reaction, but he actually laughed and said, "Sarah, I don't need a prenup with you. You don't have anything, and I'm going to make enough for both of us." I thought it was sweet back then. I thought it was love. I decided to keep my fortune a secret a little longer, waiting for the right time to surprise him, maybe buy us our dream home outright or fund his business ideas. I didn't realize that Jason's ambition was actually toxic, fragile male ego. The moment we got married, his demeanor shifted. He bought a luxury penthouse we couldn't actually afford on his salary alone. He leased sports cars. And worst of all, he brought his toxic mother, Victoria, into our lives. Victoria was a woman obsessed with status. The moment she realized I didn't come from a wealthy, prominent family, she treated me like a second-class citizen in my own home. Every single day was a battle of passive-aggressive remarks. "Sarah, make sure you don't use too much hot water. Jason pays the bills here." "Sarah, why don't you get a little job at a bakery or something? It must be embarrassing for Jason that you just sit around doing nothing." They didn't know that doing nothing meant sitting on my laptop for 2 hours every morning, managing a portfolio worth over $50 million. I paid for my own personal expenses out of my private accounts, but because I didn't boast about designer bags or parade around in diamonds, they assumed Jason was paying for my breath of air. Jason began using money as a weapon. If we had an argument, he'd threaten to cut off my allowance. When I tried to tell him that I didn't need his money, he'd roll his eyes and say, "Oh, please, Sarah, stop playing proud. You'd be living in a cardboard box if it weren't for me." I swallowed my pride. I kept my mouth shut. I kept telling myself, "He's just stressed with work. His mother is influencing him. Give him time." But then came the night of the corporate dinner. After he called me a gold digger in front of 60 people, I didn't make a scene. I waited until we got back to the penthouse. Jason threw his coat on the couch, looking self-satisfied. "Great night, right? My boss was really impressed with how grounded I am." I looked at him, my heart feeling as cold as ice. "You publicly humiliated me tonight, Jason. You called me a gold digger." He scoffed, pouring himself a drink. "Oh, get over yourself, Sarah. It was a joke. Besides, is it a lie? You bring zero financial value to this marriage. The least you can do is let me joke about it. Don't be so sensitive." That was the exact second the last spark of love inside me died. The next morning, while Jason was at work, I packed my bags. I didn't leave a dramatic note. I didn't cry. I simply called my lead corporate attorney, Marcus. "Marcus," I said, standing on the balcony looking out at the city skyline. "It's time. Activate the trust." Marcus paused on the line. "Are you sure, Sarah? Once we step in, it's going to dismantle his entire world." I smiled. A cold, sharp smile. "Dismantle it." 2 days later, Jason came home to an empty closet and a single envelope on the dining table. It contained divorce papers. Instead of reflecting on his actions, Jason called my phone, screaming, "Are you insane, Sarah? You're divorcing me? You won't get a single cent of my money, do you hear me? You signed away your rights to my assets. You'll be broke on the streets by next week. I answered calmly, I don't want a single cent of your money, Jason. Keep it. And I hung up. For the next 2 weeks, Jason, his mother, and his sister went on a smear campaign. They told everyone in our social circle that I was an ungrateful gold digger who tried to bleed Jason dry and ran away when I realized I couldn't get his money. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the wheels were turning. Jason's company was in the middle of a massive expansion. They needed a $20 million cash injection to avoid bankruptcy and go public. Jason had been bragging for months that his firm was secured, waiting on approval from their primary investment firm, Vanguard Apex. Jason was lined to be named vice president if the deal went through. What Jason didn't know was that Vanguard Apex was a subsidiary company, owned entirely by my private holding firm. The day of the final board meeting arrived. The event was held at the grandest convention center downtown. Jason, his CEO, the board of directors, and several major news outlets were present. Jason had even invited his mother and sister to sit in the VIP gallery so they could watch him get promoted. I was sitting in the private executive holding room upstairs, wearing a custom-tailored ivory suit, a 3-carat flawless diamond ring on my index finger, and my hair styled to perfection. My attorney, Marcus, stood beside me with a leather briefcase. Downstairs, Jason was at the podium, giving a grand presentation to the investors, boasting about his leadership. And with this partnership with Vanguard Apex, Jason announced confidently into the microphone, our future is secured. Suddenly, the heavy double doors at the back of the auditorium opened. My attorney walked in first, followed by 2 armed private security guards, and then me. The room went quiet. Jason stopped mid-sentence. His eyes widened. His mother in the VIP gallery gasped so loudly it echoed. Jason's face turned bright red with fury. He stepped away from the podium and marched down the aisle toward me, hissing under his breath. Sarah, what the hell are you doing here? Did you stalk me here? Security! Get this crazy woman out of here before she embarrasses me. The security guards at the door didn't move an inch. They belonged to me. I kept walking, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, until I stood right at the front of the stage. Jason's CEO rushed down looking frantic. Jason, sit down and shut up, the CEO barked, before turning to me with a deep, respectful bow. Ms. Vance, we weren't expecting the primary owner of Vanguard Apex to attend the signing in person. Jason froze. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like he was about to faint. Primary owner? What are you talking about, sir? That's my ex-wife. She's unemployed. She has no money. The CEO looked at Jason like he had lost his mind. Unemployed? Jason, Ms. Sarah Vance is the founder of Vance Global and the principal owner of Vanguard Apex. She literally owns the debt on this entire building. She is the one funding our multi-million-dollar deal. A collective gasp rippled through the entire auditorium. I turned slowly to face Jason. His mother and sister were leaning over the gallery railing, their mouths hanging open in sheer horror. I stepped up to the microphone, looking directly at Jason. 2 weeks ago, Jason, I said, my voice smooth, clear, and broadcasting through the speakers to the entire room. You stood in front of your colleagues and called me a gold digger. You told everyone I was a penniless nobody who relied on your income to survive. Jason was trembling now, sweating through his expensive suit. Sarah, wait. Please, let's talk about this privately. No, Jason, I replied coldly. You liked public speeches, remember? So let's talk publicly. I turned to the CEO and the board of directors. As the majority stakeholder of Vanguard Apex, I am officially vetoing the $20 million investment into this firm. The CEO practically turned pale. Ms. Vance, please, is there anything we can do? There is, I said calmly. My investment comes with conditions. Condition number 1. Jason's employment is terminated immediately for gross unprofessionalism and misrepresentation of company character. Condition number 2. His corporate accounts, company car, and luxury housing allowance are revoked as of this minute. The CEO didn't even hesitate. He turned to Jason, his eyes burning with rage. Jason, you're fired. Get your things and get out. Jason dropped to his knees right there on the stage. The man who was so arrogant, so proud of his status, was now crying, begging in front of his bosses, his family, and the press. Sarah, please. I'm sorry. He sobbed, reaching out toward my shoes. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I love you. Please don't do this to me. I stepped back, looking down at him with complete indifference. You didn't know I had money, Jason. And because you thought I was poor, you thought it was okay to treat me like trash. You didn't love me. You loved the power you thought you had over me. I turned my back on him as my security guards blocked him from coming near me. As I walked out of the auditorium, I could hear his mother wailing from the gallery, realizing that their golden ticket and their luxurious lifestyle had just evaporated into thin air. Within 48 hours, Jason lost his job. His luxury car was repossessed, and because he had over-leveraged his bank accounts to maintain his fake wealthy lifestyle, he was forced to declare bankruptcy. The penthouse went up for auction, and I bought it through a proxy, just to turn it into an office for my charitable foundation. They say you should never judge a book by its cover, but more importantly, never mistake someone's quiet humility for weakness, because sometimes the person you think you're stepping on is the one holding the foundation beneath your feet.